Courses developed, it stands for net readiness, training with identification and training, identification, preparedness, planning. So one of the things we really harp on is this definition of what preparedness success looks like. This is what's been laid out under the National Preparedness Goal. It says that we need to be a secure and resilient nation. That's what we hope that all of this does. But the rest of this really speaks to what needs to be done to do that. It says with capabilities. Now, capabilities are skill sets. Every one of you are in your job because you have gained and acquired some skill sets to do what you do. That's what all capabilities are, is skill sets. We gain those through training. So real quick, if we want to be successful, we're going to need to have the capabilities required, not through any one individual agency, but across the whole community. We're talking about the private sector. We're talking about healthcare. We're talking about congressional offices. We're talking about the emergency services as we know it. We need to gain these capabilities, and to do what, though? And that's the question, because training is always, so we've been doing training. When Congress asked the question in 2006, we were doing training. The question is, are we doing the right training to get the right outcomes? And if we're going to do the right training, well, what is that? Well, we need to be the skill sets gained, again, across the whole community to prevent, protect against, mitigate, respond to, and recover. And here's the key. This last section is key. We're not asking you to plan for everything. We're not asking for Houston County to be prepared for any and everything. We're asking you to be prepared for those threats and hazards that pose the greatest risk. And if we can get you to build the skill sets here, sustain those skill sets, and carry them through to do those 5 areas against the threats and hazards, and we can take that across the country, we're probably going to greatly increase the readiness of this nation. But that's not how we're doing training right now. Okay? But that's what we want to go and do. Now, this last line, as I told you, it says the threats and hazards that pose the greatest risk, because you're not expected to be great at everything. Does anyone recall what happened in Nacogdoches, Texas? Space shuttle came apart. Landed in Nacogdoches, Texas. Now, we could criticize Nacogdoches, Texas all day that they weren't prepared, but I don't think if you sent me there and I picked up the emergency plan and started flipping through and said, hey, I don't see the section on here where it talks about the space shuttle coming out of orbit and landing here. We can't be overly critical of it, right? So that's what we're trying to tell you. It's not that. But if we came to Dothan, Alabama, and you guys had a couple of serious tornadoes, and they were sent me here after the fact, and I came here and said, look, this is nothing new. Southeast Alabama gets severe weather. They get it in the springtime when these fronts come through. They get it with tropical weather that comes up out of the Gulf. They've had severe weather here. We've had a history of tornadoes. We've seen destruction, but I don't see anything in the emergency plan. I don't see the training that goes into it. I don't think they train, or they may not be trained on those things. Those are things you wouldn't want to have. Now, this is where my background coming from the private industry really helps out, because we did a root cause investigation into everything. And I come at this class that same way. So if I go to the fire department and I say, guys, you know, hey, we've got this tornado situation happen, and we're doing a root cause investigation, I want you to be able to say, hey, we prepared on this, and this. We were ready to go. What you don't want is those hard questions coming and you're saying, you know, honestly, maybe we didn't get to where we needed to be. So that's what this is all about. Okay? Now, this course, to tell you how critical it is, we take this thing out on the road, not only to places like Dothan, but I've also been to places like Broward County, where the Parkland shooting took place. For the first time, to me, it was a turning point in mass shootings. In this case, one happening out of school, where the media was not empathetic to the emergency responders. They came in and they had hard questions. Were y'all trained? Were the persons on site trained? Were people ready to do this? They had really never asked that question before. And they wanted to know, was the outcome because people weren't trained? And to some extent it was true. And here's one of the things that I learned going down there. While there was a lot of training going on, maybe not everyone gets trained. We do train, but maybe not everyone's there. Or we don't have the right persons there. And so things get skipped over. And then unfortunately you have an event like that and it really shows. And so we saw a little bit of that. One of the other things in doing the Broward County thing, we looked at more than just the shooting that had taken place. We also looked at any and all hazards. So one of the things we do in this course is going to be asking you to look at your hazards. So one in Broward County that was kind of passed over was that it's one of the largest maritime ports in the United States, Fort Lauderdale. And to make a good example, if I looked at their emergency plans and then looked at the training records, you would never know that. Right? But the thing is, that's what they are. So had they had an emergency, active shooting in the port, it would have been even more glaring, because to me there would have been more gaps, because you would not have seen any planning. And the question would be, why isn't there any planning? And then you would say, well, you know, if they got a cruise ship once every 5 years, you'd say, I understand that. If you guys don't have a lot of plans around maritime, I understand that. We're in Dothan, Alabama, okay? But if you're Fort Lauderdale, it's different. So this class goes after that, and it's what we call the golden thread, or what I like to call the golden thread in preparedness. It's simply about making sure that you guys categorize your threats and hazards that pose the greatest risk. We identify them clearly. We need to make sure that we have emergency plans that address all the direct and indirect consequences of those incidents. Everything from search and rescue to long-term care, housing, economic recovery. When those plans are done, we go take a look at what is the capabilities to carry those plans forward. And that's where I find the gaps. Because our ability, now listen to this carefully, our ability to plan far exceeds our capabilities. Our ability to plan far exceeds our capabilities to carry the plan through. So if we have good plans, that doesn't mean that we're going to be able to execute them, because we also have to have the training that goes with them. So if you're asking me what training needs to occur in Dothan over the next 5 years, I can tell you my favorite courses, but that doesn't mean that it's going to help any of you, and it's going to help this community gain another level. Because, I mean, obviously this community is not starting from scratch. This community is already at a high level. But if you want to go to a higher level, then we need to delve into this deeply and find out what's in our emergency plans and what is our training. And then we need to organize our training over the next 3 to 5 years so that we build and sustain those capabilities to carry forward what those emergency plans are. And some of that training is even to write better plans. A lot struck me, and I have not, I've got to tell you, I have not delved into professionally what occurred with the latest shooting that occurred in Nashville. I have not delved into it professionally. But sitting on the sidelines, watching what I can and reading what I can and seeing, a couple things really strike me about that. Clearly, not only was there a plan, but there had to be good training on that plan. The school administrator came outside, met the responding officers. The responding officers grouped up quickly. They went in. The other thing that you did not see in any, at least that I've seen, no parents at the school. That's training. I'm a parent. I got 4 kids. It takes a lot of training. I've got to have a lot of trust not to get to that school where I have a child. That takes a lot of trust. I'm feeling as I'm saying that. Okay, so that's a lot of training. There's a lot that has to go on to make something like that happen. I can't wait till we get a chance to get into it, because we normally do. I'm sure we'll be in Uvalde, because we like doing these courses around areas in which they've had something, because there's a lot when we do this, we learn. We went to Minneapolis after the bridge collapse in 2007. with this course. And so we just came back from Kenosha, in the internal and external, that affected us. Some of you may come from municipalities, private business, healthcare sector, whatever it may be. We want to try to bring your threats and hazards, whatever plan that you have documenting them, to the course. Because we want to review them as participants, and we want to use them to help us define what are those greatest threats and hazards. Secondly, we want to look at your emergency operation plans, or any emergency plans that you have. Why? Because we want to make sure that those plans address the threat and hazards, and probably more importantly, we want to make sure that we look to those plans to find out what capabilities we have to have. And it's a simple concept, because all we do, we take a look at the plan. The plan says we ought to have these things, but we only have these things, so all the rest of this is work. That's what we need to go and do. That's what we need to go and do. That's the work that we have. That becomes our training plan. And then one other item we ask you guys to bring is, as many as you have that are good and credible, is after action reports. Because the after action reports will help us already identify real events or I should say, exercises in which you participated where we may have failed, or it might have been items for improvement, because then we know those areas are things that we need to certainly work with training-wise.